You've made it. You made it all the way through pharmacy school. You even passed your NAPLEX. There's only one thing left stopping you from that sweet, sweet pharmacist paycheck. The MPJE. Well, you're in luck because I'm Nick Pender, your friendly neighborhood pharmacist here with a fully loaded mortar and pestle pharmacy channel. And today we're going to talk about how you can pass your MPJE in less than a week. Stay tuned to find out how. So why would you even listen to me about passing an MPJE? Well, check it out. That is my exam history. Over the past year, I have taken the MPJE over 10 times. Why would I do that to myself? I'm sure you're asking. Well, it was a requirement for my job. That video is also coming out about the best kept secret in pharmacy. Not sure which one will actually post first, but you should watch both of those either way. But yes, I've taken the MPJE over 10 times and in a short amount of time. And through that testing, I have developed a foolproof method to not only pass the MPJE, but do it quickly. Now, who is this video not for? Listen, this is not a video on being the best law pharmacist. This is not a video on how to learn the law really well. No, this is a video about passing the MPJE. Those are two different things, all right? So stay tuned and we'll talk about the methods. All right, so in order to perform my method, you're gonna need some stuff, all right? You're gonna need some resources. Now, once again, there's plenty of ways to skin a cat, but this is, my method that was developed over trial and error, and it requires some financial commitment, but I'll talk about all the resources first, and then we'll go into where the resources rank, what you do with them, and the ones you could possibly skip depending on your background, and how to put it all together to get yourself a passing score on an MPJE in a relatively short amount of time. All right, resource one, this beauty right here, Dr. C's Federal MPJE Review. Listen, I can't recommend this book enough for federal review. I know that there are several resources out there, but this is one of the best. If you don't know who Dr. C is, he taught law at University of Houston Pharmacy School for a little while. He's a JD PharmD, brilliant guy, and he makes these review books. These review books are very comprehensive and they are focused. More importantly, they're not just focused on the law, they're focused on passing the test. As of right now, I think these books are about $100 on Amazon. I will post links to everything in the description of this video so that you can have access to it. But yeah, this is where I start. This is the only thing that you will need for a federal review, doing my method. All right. The next deal is going to be the TLDR pharmacy guides. If you've never heard of that, it is a great pharmacy blog. They also sell other tools. They have like clinical handbooks and things like that. I actually use a lot of those. Full disclosure, the founders of the blog actually went to my pharmacy school. I do personally know one of them, but great content either way. But they have MPJE cheat sheets. So there's two different versions of the TLDR guides. One is essentially a blank slate that will walk you through it, asking you all the relevant questions in order to get you to understand everything that needs to be known to pass an MPJE. And the other one is a deal that's basically the same questions, but they have gone through and answered all those questions for you. One of them is $25 and the other one is $75. So here's my take on that. I would say if you have to take one MPJE, then maybe the $25 one, the empty one, is worth it because you go through, you can take all the time in the world to find all those answers. And you will know the material very well by the time you've actually completed that sheet. Now, for me in my position, I have always bought the $75 ones, the ones that come pre-completed, because I was taking MPJEs back to back. I was literally like, you can see it on my profile, is that I was maybe taking 2 weeks in between some of them at the most. So those allowed me to move faster and get more repetitions with the material in. Inside of those guides is also in the digital format. You can print them and read them, but you can also read them digitally. When you read them digitally, they provide links to the actual law on that Board of Pharmacy's website. So if there's a part of it that you're like, oh man, kind of still unclear, kind of a little foggy about the details, you can just click on it and then you can read the full law on the website. They're great. They're amazing. I can't recommend them enough. I actually have a sample of the guide right here, and it's just kind of this format. I don't know if you can see that. It's just got blocks. It has questions of all of the things that you need to know. This one I beat up and highlighted quite a bit. But yeah, super helpful guide. So the next resource is going to be pharmacyexam.com. I feel like this is probably the most popular one. And this one is a giant test question bank. To get the most out of this one, it's not so much the resource itself, but it's how you use it. Okay, and we'll talk about how to use those when we get to the actual methodology. Okay, and then there are a couple of honorable mentions. So the first one's going to be, honestly, this is probably more of a less of an honorable mention and more of a straight shortcut. So the first guide, the Dr. C's Federal Review. Dr. C also makes some state reviews for the MPJE. He has a book for Texas, Pennsylvania, Florida. I think that may be it. But if you are in one of these states, the only resource you need is that Dr. C book. His books are to the point. It's what I used for Texas, and that was the only thing I needed. I read it twice. There is questions in the back of that book. You take those exams, you do well on those exams that he has in the book, and you go sit for your MPJE. His books are that good. For those of us that do not or are not applying for a license in one of those states, then you're going to want to stay tuned for the methodology of how to put these resources together. So now that we have gone through all the resources, and like I said, the links are going to be here in the description on where to purchase those, I'll talk about the methodology of how to use them. So this methodology was developed not through success, but through failure. When I got my job at the 503B, they were like, hey, we really want you to start getting these state licenses. And I was gung-ho. I was like, let's go. And I sat for Mississippi. I took the Mississippi pharmacy law. I want to say it was like 400 pages, burned through it, and sat for my exam, passed it. Great. Then the next state on my list was Oklahoma. And I got the Oklahoma material. The Oklahoma material was about 200 pages, and still probably feeling a little tired from burning through all of that Mississippi stuff. I was doing the Oklahoma stuff, and I got toward the end. I think the last section was medical marijuana. I was like, nobody's going to ask me questions about medical marijuana on the MPJE. They're tripping. I'm not reading that. And so I didn't. And sure enough, I get on that MPJE exam, and they kept asking me questions about medical marijuana. And I was through. I failed it. This is the first time, like, you can see my history. This is the first time I failed one of those, standardized pharmacy exams. And then I was like, man, there's got to be a different way. So I scoured the internet. I started plugging and playing different resources. I won't really talk about the ones that I didn't like. I'm not here to be negative or anything like that. But through that process, I found these resources to be the most helpful. Since I put this method together, as you can see, I have not failed a MPJE. I don't know what my scores are. After a certain point, they stop giving you those scores, which I really hate, especially when you fail. So I failed my Oklahoma exam. I had no idea whether it was a 74 or a 24, which actually sucks. So, but I digress. Yeah, so through that is what this method was developed into, right? So I will tell you, this is how it starts. So the methodology is you start with the federal law. That federal law book is really good. My thought is read it twice. It is only, I mean, come on now. And we're pharmacists, right? It's only 205 pages. Okay. So that should only take you, if you're doing it diligently, it should only take you a couple of days to 3 days at the max to read it twice. Read it twice. And in the back of the book is a 60 question exam with the explanations. And this is super critical, right? Like, so it's not actually 205-page read, right? So you have, let me see when the exam starts, right? So 175 pages is your actual read, and it's a small book. It's not dense at all. You can knock, 2 trips through this book out in a couple of days with the exam. So when you take the exam, take it honestly, just like any prep exam. You're going to want to take it honestly. You're going to want to grade yourself. Even if you guess a question right, count it as a wrong answer and go through and make sure you're reading the explanations and that you get the correct understanding about why what you chose was wrong or where your knowledge deficiency was. Okay, then you're pretty much done with this deal. All right, once you're done with that, I take the TLDR guide, and I'm a big fan of, especially for exam preps, right? Keep in mind, we're not trying to be super sleuths. We're not trying to turn into JDs. We just want to pass this test. I would go through this at least 5 times. This is an even shorter read. This is about cramming as much of this information into your brain as you possibly can in a short amount of time. So these are, I think this one is 30 pages. They range, depending on the state, right? They range from 20 to 30 pages. They have a bunch of tables in here as well. So do your best to memorize those tables. This is something that I would be looking at daily before the MPJE. My favorite part about this is the condensed format, right? Yeah, read that daily at minimum. Make sure you take 5 trips through this thing, okay? And so after you've done those 2, all right, you should be taking the pharmacyexam.com exams. These are a lot bigger. They range from like 150 to 200 total questions. And this is a methodology with that. So there's different modes that you can put it on. You're going to want to put it on the mode that immediately grades the question. Because what you're going to want to do is, if you get a question wrong or you come across a question that you don't know the answer to, but you guess it right, you're going to want to flag it, okay, immediately. And when you're in that immediate grade mode, it pops explanation up at the bottom, and then it provides a link to you that you can click that will take you to that state board's website once again and give you the full readout to give you more context on what you don't know. So when you're going through those exams, I would take them at minimum twice. Your first run through is more of a learning experience. You're going to see what gaps were left by the MPJE guide, the federal guide, and the TLDR guide. Okay. And after you have those gaps, so your desktop screen should look like, it should look like mayhem. You should have like tabs open for every, you should have a tab open for every question that you got wrong, and take a trip through that section of your state's law, reread it, and get a really good understanding for what it is that you are missing on that question. The great thing about the pharmacyexam.com tool is that the structure of the exams that they have are just like the MPJE itself. So you're not going to spend a bunch of time in there and then get a way different feeling looking exam when you get to the actual MPJE. So if after that first run through, it's kind of like a knowledge check, you clear up your deficiencies, and then you'll go back through at minimum 1 more time. And through there, you're going to want to change modes, and you're going to want to go into where it actually gives you just a grade at the end. And when you get that grade at the end, it needs to be above an 80% for all of those sections. So the exams are broken into sections of about 30 to 40 questions apiece. You just want to make sure your average of all those is above an 80%. Once you are able to take those pharmacyexam.com questions and score above an 80%, you're ready for the MPJE. So I would say at minimum 2 times. And if you want to be sure, I would take one more trip through that exam and really, like I said, focus on what it is you're not understanding, what you're getting wrong, and spending time rereading or reading those statutes. Okay. And so after that, you're done. That process, you can span out over a week. I have actually completed that process in a weekend before. I've literally gone like brand new state, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I am taking the exam and passed it. That's what I did for Louisiana. This is my last one. I did Louisiana. That's how I did Louisiana. Once again, this isn't a method for being super knowledgeable about pharmacy law. It's far from that. This is a pass the MPJE. That's our goal. But yeah, that's the method. And then we'll talk about the third and final piece of this deal, which is just as important as everything else that we've talked about, which is the test taking strategy. All right. So the first thing you need to study is the test itself. And so once again, this book here, Dr. C does a really good job of laying out specifics that you need to know about the MPJE in order to pass this test. Okay. The test is adaptive, which means that as you go along, it feeds you different questions. It's not a set of questions. It is, some of the questions are weighted differently. So you're never going to get like one question doesn't equal like 1% if it's out of 120. There are also 20 test questions, right? So essentially 20 questions that do not count for or against you. Knowing all this is super helpful. That way you don't freak out during the exam. And it's very easy to freak out during the exam. So there's been times I've taken an exam and I've gotten the same question twice. That's like, and your brain just starts going crazy. It's like, oh my, did I get it wrong the last time? Do I choose the same answer? Right? Like, don't play into that. Your answer is your answer. Stick with it. One of those might have been a test question. The test itself, has errors that can show up on its process. Sometimes it might cycle you through a repeat question because it's not a set thing. The scoring is also pretty convoluted, right? Obviously with weighted questions, you kind of don't know how that's going to go. Post-test, I will tell you, just don't think about it. I just try not to think about it, because you could go through in your brain and kind of justify yourself failing or passing either way. Because you could easily go, man, that test felt pretty easy. I knew all the questions. And then you start thinking like, oh, it's adaptive. It kept giving me easy questions. Maybe it kept giving me the easy questions and the test felt easy because I was getting them wrong and I was failing. And then you can feel the opposite, right? Like, oh, it felt hard. I felt like I didn't know this. I didn't know that. I didn't know this. But maybe, it felt like that because you were getting questions right and you actually did really well in the exam. So I wouldn't think either way. And a couple of good honorable mention resources, I would be failing you if I didn't talk about this, would be the Board of Pharmacy website. Please don't take an MPJE without clicking through the Board of Pharmacy website. You will find on the MPJE, on those websites rather, that there are certain things that they will post that will straight up be MPJE questions, okay? So if there was a recent newsletter that they have, especially if there's an FAQ section, if there's a FAQ section on that board's website, you need to read it. They're typically not very long. I would just print it out, read it, on a daily basis leading up to your exam, and make sure you kind of know those, because it'll literally just be free questions, right? And of course, having a strong base on brand generic that gets tested throughout the exam. And then knowing where different controlled drugs lay in the controlled substance categories, right? So, fentanyl is a C2. Trick question, cocaine is a C2. So if I've gotten that question, cocaine is not a Schedule 1 drug. It is a Schedule 2 drug. Make sure you know that. But yeah, just making sure you know where all the drugs in your state particularly lay in controlled substance categories. There are some states where gabapentin is controlled, and you need to know that. So if you have any of those weird drugs in your state, you need to know that. List ones, right? If there's a different category for certain drugs, that weird stuff, you definitely need to know that as well. All right, well, that's it. And hopefully you pass your MPJE with as little stress as possible. If you have any other questions, hit me in the comment section. I will try my best to answer them. But yeah, this is my foolproof method for passing an MPJE in a relatively short amount of time. You can see my exam history in itself and know that this method for sure works. And peace out and good luck.